This is a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.
Welcome back to our continuing coverage in the trial of Scot Peterson, the Parkland School resource officer. Let's go to the courtroom for segment number 3 of today.
Mr. Killer and Mr. Klinger present for the state. I have Mr. Igarsh present with Mr. Peterson, who likewise is present. We are outside the presence of the jury. State, anything you need me to address before we bring the jury in and begin your presentation?
No, Judge.
Defense, anything you need me to address?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It's my understanding from speaking with the state that their next witnesses might include people who want to introduce certain video clips, and we had filed a motion in limine to preclude those from being admitted, and the court had never ruled on those motions.
How long are the video clips?
A minute and a half.
Okay. Can we turn off the screen? I need to see what we're talking about, so they're going to have to play the videos. State, are these items marked?
Yes, they are.
Okay. As soon as the court personnel have turned off the appropriate screens.
Would you like for me to approach, Your Honor?
Yeah, I need to look at them. Tell me who the witness is, who these are going to come into.
Well, we have the next witness is Danielle Gilbert, and this is a video that she took on her cell phone inside the classroom.
Okay, is it marked?
It is. It's pre-marked as State C.
No, I'm going to ask you to play so I can see.
Oh, you want me to play?
Yeah. This is State C for identification.
Yeah. Yes, Judge.
Ian, are we good with everything? Okay.
Judge, Ms. Gilbert recorded, I believe, seven videos. We've only chosen the 2 that would be appropriate for this case. We've removed the videos that have the students that are injured or anything graphic. These are for the audio element of what was able to be heard.
Sure. All right, so this is the first video on State's Exhibit C for identification.
Yes, that's
Let me make sure.
Is the state going to introduce the video portion or is the audio portion?
It's the video and
Is this Attorney 3?
Yes.
So I can see it, Attorney 3.
Yes, Judge.
Yeah, no, the audio is going to play. Yeah, there's nothing to do about that. The audio is going to play. Go ahead, sir. Okay, so defense, I'm taking into account everything you previously argued regarding probative value versus prejudicial effect. Anything else you want to tell me as to State's Exhibit C for identification?
Yes, I'm not sure that I specifically ever articulated my objection specifically to this video because candidly they had so many and I didn't even know which clips that they were going to use. First of all, what's important to note is my argument is that any probative value is outweighed by the prejudicial effect. Let's start with the probative value. I don't think that there's any. This was from the first floor. As you can tell from both of our opening arguments, no one's contesting the fact that my client wasn't even at the scene when those shots were fired. So there's zero value. Secondly, the sounds are inconsistent. So if their argument is, well, we're doing it to show a particular sound, you've got probably 4 or 5 different sounds being made depending upon where the shots are coming from. And clearly, I'm going to use words to articulate the emotion, but you have a student writhing in agony. You hear somebody yell, "Help me." This is very hard to watch. It's an appeal to sympathy. Gets on the prejudicial side of the scale. And on balance, that's more significant than any probative value.
Okay, Ms. Gomes, anything you want to tell me in response? Go ahead.
Yes, Judge. The jury is going to make a determination as to Scot Peterson's credibility when he says that he was only able to hear 2 to 3 gunshots. On that audio, we are able to hear the gunshots that are taking place not on the first floor, but on the 3rd floor after the fire alarm has already stopped. It also shows that the fire alarm only went off for a very short period of time, and that while Scot Peterson is standing within proximity of the building, those additional shots that we hear going off in the background can be heard and are loud and are clear.
Okay, so over the defense objection, I do find that it's probative. It does outweigh any prejudicial effect. It's certainly relevant to issues that have been raised, and the jury's going to have to determine over the defense objection, which is otherwise preserved, assuming, of course, that the item is otherwise properly admitted. The defense objection to State's Exhibit C for identification at this time is going to be overruled. When the witness is on the witness stand, if the State does intend to move it into evidence defense, I'll ask you if you have any additional objections based on the witness's testimony, and we'll go from there. Okay? Okay, that's over the defense objection. Any other exhibits as to this witness?
The witness that will be testifying after is Ivy Seamus. Through Ms. Seamus, we will be entering in a video that was taken inside of her classroom. And I'll let Mr. Kohberger.
Is that item marked?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
This is State's D for identification?
Yes.
How long is this video?
It's very short section.
Seconds, 13
13
seconds.
seconds at the most.
Okay, go ahead. Let's see it.
Holy shit.
Oh my God!
What floor is this classroom in State's Exhibit D for identification?
It was in the, excuse me, first floor, classroom 1214, I believe, Judge. Double check.
Okay. Defense, again, I'll count everything you've already told me as you having repeated. Anything else you want to tell me regarding State's Exhibit D for identification?
Yeah, just one more argument. What that then depicts is what the sounds sounded like from wherever that person was on the first floor, which had nothing to do with my client who wasn't even there yet, and how that recording registered that sound in that particular classroom, which has zero relevance to how my client would have heard the sound significantly further away by the 700 to 800 building. And this building we're talking about has hurricane-proof windows and is significant. That's what the evidence will show. It has very little to no value. And clearly, I mean, if you're human and you're not a sociopath, that was very prejudicial. And again, we don't want the jurors being consumed with that emotion. And that's why we're moving to suppress it.
Okay. State, I'll consider the same response Ms. Gomes gave you before. Anything additional you want to tell me, Mr. Clean?
Just again, I would say that Mr. Igalsh's objections were more for cross-examination than it would be for reasoning to not allow the video in. If you more prejudicial. That's the only thing I would add.
Okay. Okay, so for State's Exhibit D for identification, again, assuming otherwise the proper predicate is laid for the admission of the item, it would be over the defense objection. I likewise find these two clips to be probative. The probative value outweighs the prejudicial effect. It goes to the heart of issues that the jurors are going to have to determine. That is going to be over the defense objection, which is otherwise preserved. State, anything else I need to look at before we get going?
No, I don't.
No, Judge, but can we have 2 minutes, please? Just to I think the witness is not right outside.
2 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay. Pending the outcome of my ruling, some of this evidence is about to be played again in front of the jury. I cannot let anything interfere with the state getting a fair trial. Likewise, I cannot let anything interfere with the defense getting a fair trial. So if at any point in time you think it's more appropriate to leave the courtroom, please feel free to do so. If something happens in the gallery that causes the jurors to turn their heads, that will be my indication. If the jury is not looking at the evidence, if they're not listening to the lawyers, if they turn their heads to see something that's taking place in the gallery, I'm going to ask BSO to handle that situation. I don't want to have to do that. So again, if you think it's smarter to exit the courtroom at this time or at any time, everyone is certainly free to do so. Okay, please bring the jury back in.
Jurors entering.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back at those same seats, you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back at those same seats, you may be seated. All the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get the notepads back out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch. Number one, I apologize for the brief delay in getting started this afternoon. Please don't blame the lawyers for that. You can blame me for that. But I promise you we were in here working. That's number one. Number two, before we took the lunch break, you had heard the opening statements. So at this point, we're going to begin the state's presentation. State, when you are ready, you may call your first witness.
Hey, Judge. The state calls Danielle Gilbert.
If I could please have you come all the way up here to the witness stand. Once you reach it, but before you have a seat, you can just stop and look at me. Raise your right hand. I swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. Please be seated. And once you are seated, if I can get you to scoot that chair all the way up as far as it will go. Can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
Danielle Gilbert, DANIELLE GILBERT.
Ms. Gomes, you may inquire.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Danielle. Please introduce yourself to the jury and tell them where you currently live.
Hi, my name is Danielle Gilbert and I live in Orlando.
Are you in school in Orlando or are you working?
I just graduated from UCF. I graduated with my bachelor's in criminal justice with a minor in psychology.
Now, Danielle, where do you plan on living once you leave Orlando?
Once I leave Orlando in July, I'm moving back down here to Pompano.
And are you from the South Florida area?
Yes, I am.
Where did you go to high school?
I went to high school at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas,
What city is that in?
Parkland, Florida.
I'd like to direct your attention to February of 2018. What year of high school were you in that year?
I was a junior.
Now, specifically, February 14th, 2018. Did you attend school that day?
Yes.
Can you please explain for the jury what was going on at school prior to 2 p.m. that day?
Yes. So that day, February 14th, 2018, it was Valentine's Day. It was just, typical Wednesday, just happened to be a holiday. Everyone was in great spirits, super happy, balloons everywhere, stuffed animals, chocolates, handing out roses and carnations. It was just, typical. It was actually a really great day at school. Just went through our typical classes, periods, doing schoolwork, lunch in the cafeteria, just what you would assume a normal day would look like.
Were those types of festivities common with holidays at your high school?
Yeah, if it was like a holiday, people would, like Halloween, dress up, Valentine's Day, bring stuffed animals, just typical things you would assume for holidays.
Now, turning your attention to fourth period, what building were you in?
I was in the 1200 building.
Would a map of the school aid in your testimony today?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned the 1200 building, but before that, we're going to start with the actual campus.
Mm-hmm.
No objection.
Can I may approach the witness?
You may.
Okay. Danielle, I'm showing you what has been pre-marked as states A. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
That is the layout, or I guess a bird's eye view of the Stoneman Douglas campus.
And is this a fair and accurate depiction of the Stoneman Douglas campus?
Yes.
Judge, at this time, the state moves what's been pre-marked into evidence as states A, states 1.
Defense, no objection. Without objection, states A for identification is now going to be in evidence. That's going to be States Exhibit 1. Ms. Gomes, do you want to use the overhead?
Yes, please.
Do we need... She can see? The witness can see it. Okay, very good. You may proceed.
All right, Judge, I'm going to publish what is now in evidence as states 1. Danielle, can you see the image in front of you?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Can you describe for the members of the jury what we're looking at in this photograph?
So this is going to be a bird's eye view layout of Stoneman Douglas. The brown buildings you see are going to be all of the buildings that make up the campus. The top right is going to be the senior lot, where the seniors would go and park for school. On the left-hand side is going to be the football field with the track, the baseball field, tennis courts, and just open fields and just everything that encompasses the campus.
You should be able to interact with the screen, Danielle. I'm going to ask you to, if you tap the screen.
Give me 1 second. The witness should be able to do it. That's it.
Thank you.
You have to select.
Oh, thank you. And then the color? Yes. Okay.
Now, I'm going to ask you to circle for the jury the 1200 building.
That's going to be right here.
And is that the building that you were in during fourth period on February 14th?
Yes, it is.
No objection.
May I approach, Judge?
You may.
Danielle, I'm showing you what's pre-marked Estates B. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
That's the layout of the first floor of the 1200 building.
Does this map fairly and accurately depict the layout of the first floor?
Yes, it does.
The state moves into evidence what's been pre-marked as States B, as States 2.
Any objection?
Not at all.
Without objection, States B for identification will now be in evidence. That is States Exhibit 2.
Permission to publish?
As soon as Ms. Wilcox marks it, you may.
Now publishing States 2.
Need to
I
clear.
was going to say, can I use this?
An X.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Danielle, are you able to see States 2 in
Yes,
front of
I am.
you? Okay, describe for the jury what we're looking at in States 2.
So that's going to be the layout of the first floor of the 1200 building. On your left-hand side is going to be the west entrance, and on your right-hand side is going to be the east entrance.
Can you describe for us the stairwells on both sides of the building?
Yes, so there's a stairwell. If you see, it says 1200B and 1200A on the bottom left and top right-hand corners. Those are going to be the two staircases for that building. When you enter, it's just what you would assume is your typical staircase. It just goes up and around up until you get until the third floor.
Which classroom were you in during fourth period on the 14th?
I was in classroom 1213 right there.
Thank you. And just for the record, the witness has circled classroom 1213. What class was that?
It was advanced placement psychology.
Do you remember what your teacher's name was?
Yes, Miss Ronit Rayoven.
Okay. Now, describe for us what happened while you were in your fourth period class.
So, fourth period, typical class as it normally would be. Just go in, sit down when the bell rings. Miss Rayoven stood up at the front of the class and taught her lesson that day, as she always does. Everything was going normal. We were all just sitting in our seats, listening to her lecture. And then about 20 minutes before the bell rang was when we heard the first shot. And immediately we dropped to the ground and started running to, I guess what you would call safety, just basically away from the door where the individual wouldn't be able to see us who was shooting. So we heard the first shot, immediately ran over to the corner of the room, and there was about 30 of us in the classroom, so we were all kind of at an L in the corner that's not by the door, and we just sat there and huddled and held each other, just in hopes that what we thought wasn't happening, or what we thought was happening wasn't happening.
Can I back you up to that first
Yes.
shot that you heard? When you first heard that first noise, did you know that it was a gunshot?
Instantly.
And how did you know that?
The sound was just unmistakable. It was the loudest, ear-piercing, horrific thing I've ever heard in my life.
Why did students take the approach that they did in response to that shot? Why did you position yourselves in the classroom in those particular positions?
A lot of it was instinctual. So originally when the first shot went off, we actually ran towards the window of the classroom, and Miss Rioven instructed us to run away from the window so that we were out of sight. And so once we went into what we would call the hard corner, basically away from view, we all just grabbed a spot as quickly as we could and just sat and ducked and held together as closely as we could.
Was that procedure, that process of moving away from the windows, something that you had all practiced in the event of an emergency?
No, it wasn't. I think instinctually you hear a noise like that and you run away from it. And Miss Rioven just, something came over her and told her to make sure that we were all away from the window and away from view. And so she was the one that instructed us to go towards the other side of the classroom, the south side of the classroom, away from view of the window.
The teacher kind of took over what was happening in the classroom
Yes.
as far as directing you?
Yes.
Okay, and did you all follow the teacher's instructions as to which area to go to?
Yes.
Did she direct you to certain places? You said away from the window. What about the door?
So the reason she instructed us not to go towards the window is because in the door of the classroom, there is a small window that you can look through and see the inside. So since we were running towards the window on the opposite side of where the door is, we would have been in plain sight. So she instructed us to come basically towards the door, but away from the view of the window inside the door, so that we weren't in plain sight and that we were in a spot, basically the only spot in the classroom that was a good hiding place.
As you all are hiding, do you hear additional shots?
Yes.
Approximately how many gunshots do you then hear in addition to that first shot?
I don't know the exact number, but it sounded like a lot.
And it's okay if you don't know the exact
Yeah,
number.
I don't.
Do you know an approximate number?
I don't.
As you're sitting there and you're hearing the gunshots, what happens inside your classroom?
So we were hearing the first of the many gunshots that were to come, and we were just sitting there basically just waiting. And after however long it was, I want to say it was about a minute and a half, then he shot into classroom 1213, the classroom that I was in. He injured 4 people in my class, killing one of them. And then he moved on and continued, and we just sat there and waited.
Now, when you say he, you're referencing the shooter.
Correct.
And describe for us what happens when he actually shoots into the classroom.
Yeah, so he shot through the window that was in the door of the classroom and injured the 4 students that were the most in view, I guess, for lack of better words.
And who were those 4 students?
It was Benjamin McCander, Samantha Mayer, Madeline Wilford, and Carmen Chenchup was murdered.
After those gunshots go off in the classroom, did the shooter proceed away from your classroom?
Yes, and I was only aware of this because the sounds of the shots slowly started to decrease and not be able to really hear it anymore.
And were you able to track when the sounds of the gunfire were closer to you versus further away from you?
Yeah, you could definitely tell whether he was right outside the door or not near you.
You're inside the classroom, and you said it's for approximately 20 minutes, is that correct?
Yeah, it was about 20 minutes from the time that he started shooting to the time that the police came to our classroom.
During those 20 minutes, did any officers walk by? Did you see any officers outside of the classroom window?
No, not during those 20 minutes. There was no one outside our classroom, no.
And what are you physically observing during those 20 minutes?
So while we're sitting there in the classroom, after he had already shot into our class, we were basically just grabbing blankets and tourniquets and, it wasn't actually a tourniquet, it was just anything that we could get our hands on. People were taking off their jackets, taking off blankets, and just wrapping it around the students that were injured, trying to stop the bleeding.
Was it the goal that students were rendering aid to each other?
I think in that moment, we were all just so in such unbelievable shock that there really wasn't anything that any student did that was purposeful, I guess you can say, that they had practiced or knew what to do. Everything was just in the moment, instinctual stuff that we just it just came to us in the moment. We just knew what we needed to do.
What were you thinking during those 20 minutes?
I was just waiting for the police. It was the longest 20 minutes of my entire life. It felt like eternity. And the whole time, we were all just waiting for the police to come, just have somebody knock on the door and take us out of that horror.
Danielle, did you know who Deputy Peterson was?
Yes, I did.
Who did you know him to be?
I knew him as the police officer that was assigned to Stoneman Douglas.
Did you know that Deputy Peterson carried a firearm?
I did, yes.
Did Deputy Peterson ever enter your classroom that day?
He did not.
Did he ever enter the hallway?
He did not.
Did you ever see Deputy Peterson assist any students that day?
I did not.
A moment to confirm.
Yes, ma'am.
Danielle, while you were in the classroom, did you make any phone calls?
I did, yes.
Who did you call?
My mom.
Why did you call your mother?
Instinct. I just, in that moment, felt like I needed to hear my mom's voice and she needed to hear mine.
Did you also use your phone to make any recordings?
Yes, I did.
Approach the witness.
You may.
Ms. Gilbert, I'm showing you what's been pre-marked as States C. Do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize it?
It's the flash drive that I signed saying that those are the videos that I took.
And the videos that were taken on your phone were placed on this flash drive?
Yes, they were.
Judge, the state moves what's been pre-marked as State C into evidence as State 3.
Any additional objection?
No addition.
Over the defense objection. State C for identification will now be in evidence. That is State's Exhibit 3. Ms. Combs, are you publishing State's Exhibit 3?
I am just...
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, sorry.
Very good.
Is that wrong?
Ms. Combs, if you want to publish
Yes,
State's
permission
Exhibit
to
3,
publish.
you may proceed.
What is going on? Fireworks don't shatter glass. Lock it.
Danielle, that second video was taken at around 2:23:20, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
Judge, I have nothing further.
Okay, cross-examination, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gilbert.
Hello.
I'm very sorry that you endured what you did.
Thank you.
I'm going to be extremely brief, I promise you. Just a few questions. Your classroom, just so they're crystal clear, is on the first floor of the 1200 building, correct?
Yes.
And the shooter was on your floor when we're hearing at least the initial shots, right? They were very loud. He was on your floor.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, correct.
And there's no question that he was inside the 1200 building, and you were also inside the 1200 building when you heard those shots, correct?
Yes.
And I think you testified that the sounds slowly decreased and we couldn't hear them as he moved throughout the 1200 building, correct?
In the classroom that I was in 1213, once he went up a couple of floors, like to the second or third, then it died down, yes.
Right. And there were times then that he would be shooting that you couldn't hear him based upon where you were located, correct?
Yes.
And you have no first-hand knowledge at all about what he was going through, what he was encountering, where he was located, correct?
That day, I was not sure.
Okay. Again, I'm very sorry that you had to go through this. I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Okay, based on that, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Is the witness excused?
Yes, yes.
All right, you may step down. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
While she is doing that, State, you may call your next witness.
The next witness will be Ivy Seamus.
That's going to be through the technology?
Yes.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you a real quick 5-minute restroom break. We need to set up some technology for the next witness. Same admonition as always, please do not discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else. No research on the case directly or indirectly in any way, shape, or form. If you'll leave the notepads in your chairs and just step to the platform for 1 moment, I will be right back with you. Thank you. Okay, we're outside the presence of the jury. Everyone can be seated. I think, State, we're going to get the Zoom going, and we're going to get your witness on there. I need to get Mr. Peterson on my meeting. The only people admitted to my meeting are going to be Mr. Peterson's computer, your witness. The State is going to be sharing something, and then the courtroom view. You also wanted to share a video or have the witness authenticate if that State's Exhibit D for identification?
D, yes, sir.
I'm going to reach out to the witness now, Judge, just to ask
Okay,
her.
so these stay off.
Stay out.
Yeah, everything stays off.
And Judge, while the witness is logging in, may I approach the clerk to hand her the evidence?
Yeah, that's fine. Are you all logged in as State Attorney's Office?
Yes.
Okay. And then, do we have, Mr. Igar, I need you, are you all hooked up to Zoom? I need Mr. Peterson on a Zoom computer. I need you to sign into my Zoom meeting. So so that the only thing on that screen is going to be Mr. Peterson. State, while they're doing that, you did tell me this is a relatively short witness, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get this going, we'll bring the jury back in and handle this witness, and I'll give the staff a real quick restroom break. Ma'am, Ms. Seamus, I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
You can put your hand down. Please state your full name and spell your full name.
My name is Ivy Seamus, Ivyschamis.
Ms. Seamus, you see, or now you just mute yourself. No, just mute. You got it.
Talk to the mic.
Yeah, that's my fault. Okay. Can you see the bottom left corner of the Zoom screen is actually a picture of Mr. Peterson. It says Mark Eiglarsh on the bottom. Can you see him clearly?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Peterson, can you say something back to me so I can see that the witness can hear you as well?
Yes, I can see you.
Can you hear him okay?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Peterson, you're able to see and hear Ms. Seamus?
I can.
Okay. So state anything else before we bring the jury back in?
Will I be able to see the witness?
It's black, the screen is not for some reason.
Well, but they're gonna play something that can't go up on the screen. Ms. Gomes, could you see? It never came up on the screen?
It did. Originally when we practiced, I was able to see Ms. Seamus. It's not here. He has to be able to see it.
Okay. We're gonna turn it on up here,
Yes,
but we're gonna turn it off when it comes to the exhibit.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Ian, one more question. I want you to take this, pull this camera back up, Mr. Kramer, just a touch. Okay. Okay, state, you otherwise ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Defense, you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, please bring the jury back. Ms. Seamus, once I have the jury back in, I'm going to have the state call you as a witness, and I'm going to swear you in again and ask you to spell your name again, okay?
Sure.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Come on in. Once you're back at those same seats, you may be seated. All right, all the parties may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you using the notepads, I'll give you a moment to get the notepads back out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, when we took our real quick break, we were in the middle of the state's presentation. We're going to resume that momentarily. I did want to let you know, although most witnesses obviously come before you live and testify in the witness stand directly in front of you by the agreement of the parties, the next witness is testifying via technology. So we're going to go forward with that witness. State, when you are ready, you may call your next witness.
The state will call Ivy Sheamus, please, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Sheamus, can I get you to raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, sir.
Okay, you can put your hand down. Can you please state your full name and spell your full name?
My name is Ivy Sheamus, IvySchamis.
Mr. Clear, you may inquire.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Sheamus, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you see me and hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Ivy Sheamus, and in relation to this trial, I was a teacher at Stoneman Douglas for about 2 decades.
And where are you today, Ms. Sheamus?
I currently live in Washington, D.C.
And are you currently employed?
I am.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm an office manager at a small private school in the district.
And as you said just a few moments ago, there was a time when you were working at Marjory Stoneman Douglas?
Yes.
What years did you work at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School?
I worked there from 2001 until the end of 2019.
And what did you do at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School?
I taught social studies.
And were you teaching on February 14th of 2018?
I was.
Okay. That afternoon, did you have classes that afternoon to teach?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Were you teaching classes the afternoon of February 14th?
Yes, I was.
And what class were you teaching?
I was teaching history of the Holocaust.
And what time of the afternoon do you remember when that class started?
It started a little after 1 o'clock, I believe.
Right. And what time was it supposed to go to?
And it goes until the end of the day, which is 2:40 p.m.
Okay. So can you tell the jury what you were teaching that particular day in the Holocaust class?
Yes, on that particular day, the 2018 Olympics in Pyeongchang was happening. So to make the class relatable, I change up my curriculum to make the students feel a little bit more related to what's going on in the world today. So we were doing a lesson on the 1936 Olympics in Berlin that day.
And I forgot to ask you, do you remember which classroom number you were in at the time?
Yes, I taught in room 1214 in the 1200 building on the first floor.
And while you were teaching that lesson regarding the Olympics, did anything unusual happen?
Yes, towards the end of class, maybe 20 minutes or so left, we were discussing the Jesse Owens story, actually, and we heard very loud shots ring out in the hallway, which sounded right outside the classroom.
And what did you do when you heard those loud sounds?
Well, the students, I had juniors and seniors at the time, and they, I think, froze for maybe a second, and then everybody just scrambled out of their seats and tried to find cover in a very tight space, of course. But and I watched them scramble, and one young lady called me over, so I ran and hovered with her in one of the corners.
And do you remember how many shots you heard, or how many loud noises you heard?
There were multiple. It sounded like it was out in the hallway. It was multiple shots. I don't know the number, but it was definitely more than one.
Okay. And do you remember approximately how many students you had in the classroom at the time?
Yeah, there were approximately 30 students with me at that time.
So after you heard those initial shots, what happened next?
So the students scrambled to different areas of the classroom. It was a very small classroom with a lot of furniture and no walk-in closet or nowhere to hide. We had never done an active shooter drill, so none of us were really prepared. And most of us were, I think all of us, were really huddled down on the ground, and within seconds after we heard that in the hallway, shots were flying through the glass window of the door that ran down to the handle of the door, and they were flying all over our classroom.
The shots and glass were flying all over the classroom?
Yes, sir.
And what was the sound of that like?
Deafening, actually. It was deafening and extremely scary.
The door to that classroom, do you remember whether it opened in or out?
The door opens out. It was locked, but if the glass was shot out, it was easy to open it from the inside.
Was there a point in time when the fire alarm came on? Do you recall that?
There was a time when the fire alarm came on. I don't know the time, but there was a time when the fire alarm sounded.
Okay. And you described that there was shots coming into the room, glass, it was very loud. What happened after that?
After the shots in my classroom?
Yes, did you hear anything after that?
Yes, we heard everything after that. I mean, I was down on the ground with some of the students, and I took notice of the kids that were around me, and I just figured that whoever was out in the hallway, I didn't know if it was one person or many, I didn't know, obviously, but I really assumed that person, after they shot out the glass, was going to come into the classroom. So I was thinking, as the only adult in that classroom, what am I going to do? And so I thought I was going to stand up and say something to whoever came in. But as I was preparing myself for that, because I figured that would be the last thing I ever said, I heard the shots then leaving our classroom. I heard them across the hall, and I wasn't so sure, but I was pretty sure those shots were going into my friend Ronit across the hall, who taught psychology.
Do you remember what classroom that number was?
Yes, she was 1213. We were very close friends, so we're the only ones, I think, in that building since the building was built in 2009. We've been there continuously.
And could you describe for us, were the shots then not quite as loud when you thought they were going into 1213?
They were loud. They just weren't as loud as they were coming right into my classroom, but they were quite loud.
I also asked you, did you see anything other than the bullets coming through the door, coming through the broken glass?
We saw or I saw anyway, I don't know what that part of the gun is that was coming into the class that was going around, but I didn't see a person.
Okay, you just saw the end of the gun, correct?
Correct.
Was it
Correct.
Firing?
Sorry?
I'm sorry, was it firing when you saw it?
Yes.
What happened after, you said it sounded as though it was over at room 1213. What happened next?
And I think originally the students in my classroom were screaming, but then they stopped screaming because we all kept going, shh, shh, shh. We were, everyone was shushing each other because we thought the person with the gun would come back. And so we were trying to be very quiet. So we were all really, really quiet, and we heard the shots, in the hallway, and so we heard what was going on, but we were very quiet.
Do you remember whether or not the alarm eventually shut off?
I don't remember when the alarm shut off.
Do you
I don't
shutting
remember.
off, though? Do you remember it shutting off? You don't remember it all?
I'm sorry, I don't remember. I don't remember. I think it was focused on the gunshots. I don't know I don't remember if the alarm went off or I know it was going. The alarm was sounding, but I don't remember when it shut off.
And was the alarm also, what was the pitch of the alarm? Was it loud? No.
The pitch of the alarm is loud as well, yes.
Was there anyone injured or hurt in your classroom?
Yes, 4 students were injured, and Nicholas Dworet and Helena Ramsey were murdered in my classroom that day.
And when did you realize that they had been murdered?
I didn't know they were dead until that evening at the Marriott.
Did there come a time when the police showed up?
Yes, Kelly in my class was able, I don't know if other students too, but Kelly was able to get 911. That's the young lady that was huddling with me, and she kept saying 1214, 1214, 1214. So I know they knew what room we were in. And so we waited very quietly until we were rescued. We were just waiting for somebody to rescue us. We didn't know if we could get up because we didn't know if people were still in the building with a gun or guns.
Do you know about how much time elapsed from when the gunshots went off inside your classroom to when you were rescued?
It wasn't within the half hour, I believe. It wasn't. We weren't waiting there for hours. I believe it was I think it was within the half hour that a SWAT team came, let themselves into our classroom.
And that day and prior to that day, did you know the defendant, Scot Peterson?
Very little. I don't think we had much interaction. Very little.
Did you see him that day at all?
I did not see him that day. In fact, I asked someone if he was on campus that day because I didn't know if he was there.
Okay. I believe it's a little unusual because we're on Zoom. This is, Aaron has the drive. This is state's D for identification. So this was sent, a picture of this was sent up to Ms. Chambers. She looked at this a few weeks, about a week ago. And
No additional objection.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Bryan.
So earlier, I believe earlier today, did you receive a photograph from Assistant State Attorney Kristen Gomes?
Yes.
Okay, and do you remember what that was a photograph of?
Like a flash drive.
Okay. And do you recall ever seeing that, what was on that flash drive?
Yes.
And what was on that flash drive, did that accurately represent what was happening in your classroom that day?
It does. Mm-hmm.
It is an accurate depiction of your classroom that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Judge, at this time, we'd like to enter State's D for identification of evidence.
Defense, no additional objection?
No additional.
Okay, over the defense objection, State's D for identification will now be in evidence. That is State's Exhibit 4. State, this is 2 clips, correct?
Yes, sir. No, on one, yes.
Yeah, so we're going to turn that off. and then I'm going to enable the sharing screen, and you're going to play it. You did it. Tell me if you can. And Mr. Clare, you want to publish States 4?
Yes, sir.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
Holy shit. Oh my God!
Oh, that was it.
Okay, can we turn that back on? You have any other questions for the witness?
No.
You do not? Okay, cross-examination, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Seamus.
Hi.
I'm sorry that you went through this. I just have a few very quick questions, okay?
Yes, sure.
I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Your classroom was 1214, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that would make it on the first floor of the 1200 building, correct?
Correct.
And the shots that you heard from the hallway towards your direction, your classroom, were what you call deafening. They were very loud, correct?
That's correct.
And then you heard shots in your friend's classroom, correct?
Correct.
And that was right across the hall in 1213, correct?
Yes.
And I think I heard you say that while those sounds were loud, they were less loud because it was just across the hallway, correct?
Yes. They were loud. I'm not saying they were the same exact as shots coming through my classroom, but
Right.
they were also loud.
Without question. But I think your words, if I heard you correctly, that they were less loud than the ones that you are encountering in your classroom, correct?
Sure.
Okay. I thank you for your 2 decades of service. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me to teach there.
Thank you.
Okay, based on that, a redirect.
No, Your Honor. Thank you, sir.
The witness is excused? State?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Seamus, I'm going to end the Zoom at this point. Thank you for bearing with us, okay? Ladies,
Thank you so much.
Ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen, I'm going to give you a real quick restroom break. We're going to get the technology back to normal, and then I'm going to be right back with you. We're going to continue with the state's presentation. Again, please don't discuss the facts of the case, the evidence, the witnesses, or the testimony amongst yourselves or anyone else. Please leave the notepads in your chairs. Just step in the back for me one moment. I'll be right back with you. Thank you. Okay, we're outside the presence of the jury. Real quick 5-minute restroom break. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
That wraps up segment number 3 in our coverage in the trial of Scot Peterson. There is more to come. I'm Tony Bruschi. Press subscribe so you don't miss any of our coverage.
This has been a special report from True Crime Today and the Hidden Killers podcast.